My name is Jerry West, and I am a Metro missionary to Washington, D.C. Metro Missions is the missionary program of the North American Missions Department of the United Pentecostal Church International. The UPCI has experienced tremendous revival worldwide, with nearly 10,000 churches across the world. But what you may not realize, though, is while we are reaching the world, we are losing our cities. Across North America, our metro cities have only one church for every 300,000 people. Take Washington, D.C., the city that God has called my family to. In Washington, D.C. proper, an area that is just 68 square miles, over 700,000 people live in its boundaries, and yet there is only one English-speaking United Pentecostal Church. In the Beltway, there are over 1.8 million people, and only two English-speaking UPCI churches. It's an area that we love as tourists, but we've neglected as the church. But we believe that God has a great revival for the Washington, D.C. metro, and that He has called our family to that great American city to establish apostolic churches throughout the region. D.C. is a dark place. Certainly, it could be said that the enemy has control over the area. But just because the enemy controls something does not mean he owns it. The Bible actually tells us that God is the possessor of heaven and earth. And I believe the church needs to take Washington, D.C. back. In a few moments, you'll likely be watching a video of my family telling the story of how God called us to Washington, D.C. and explaining the ways that you can be a part of our mission to reach D.C. But I want to challenge you to do this one thing. Perhaps you've heard it said that if you don't vote, you can't complain. Of course, the idea behind that statement is that if you don't use your voice, don't complain about what happens. But my challenge to you is this: the church has a voice much more powerful than a vote. It's a voice used not in a ballot box, but in a prayer closet. God said, "If my people will humble themselves and pray." If you don't pray for Washington, D.C., then don't complain about it. But if you are willing to pray, God will hear, God will forgive, and God will heal. God bless you and your church, and thank you for your prayers for our nation's capital.